Ladies, gentlemen, welcome yet again. I'm being kindly joined by two, or maybe I can say three gentlemen. There's one guy hiding in the back, I'll introduce him later. But I've got one of the best, if not the best. Some people may say I'm crazy, but this man's Lars playing this man's King play. Right, you've got KRW King 101, Tekken 7's prodigy, the son himself. Some people say he's Harada's firstborn that he never talked about. This man's got the best Tekken 7 channel in Southern Africa. I'll put the link in the description. And in the other side, I'm being joined by none other than Kano's half-brother himself, Smooth Jarvis 101, and the guy sitting in the back. These two are brothers, in case you didn't know. We've got Fiery D2. Ladies and gentlemen, say what's up to these great individuals, and welcome to one thing I haven't done in a very long time. I believe the last time I did a podcast was the Spiral Arrow podcast episode 6. Maybe it was episode 6, I don't know. Maybe it was episode 7. I have no idea. Go back, check the archives. But we're here now, and we're here to discuss one particular thing that's been floating around. Fiery D2 once came to me, and he asked a very valid question. He was saying that, considering the landscape as it is, with these fighting games that we play, various fighting games, various mechanics, various characters and events, do you think, this was the question, do you think that Granblue Fantasy Versus, as this game that came out during the worst time for a fighting game to come out in 2020, during COVID, did this game manage to achieve one of its main goals that it set out to achieve? And that is to simplify the fighting game formula in an entertaining and enjoyable way that would get a lot of people into the game, get a lot of people fighting early, enjoying the game, and still just have enough depth to keep people involved and interested in the long run. Very complicated question. I'm gonna build up to that answer, but hopefully these two or three gentlemen will pop in and give us their know-how. Please, if there's anything you two would like to say before we begin, maybe I'll start with you, KRW King. What's up? What's been going on? How are you liking Season 4 Tekken, and generally what's COVID been doing for you?
Yo, Charles, man. Hey, it's been a minute since I've also featured in a podcast. I'm not gonna lie to you. And hey, bruh, 2020 has been really harsh. Like, hey, a lot of people got retrenched, and economies are failing. But the thing is, we never stop playing games during these tough times. And of which, Tekken 7 Season 4 feels like Tekken 7 Season 3.5.
Okay, why?
Here's the thing, Charles. There was a point when Harada was saying that they are planning on releasing a big update before Season 4, which will be used during the TWT online tournaments, right?
Yeah.
I feel like this update here is that update, but with new moves. That's it. Because now that my main Lars, right, he's got that Season 3 war carry that everyone had all of a sudden. And there's nothing significant in terms of changes whatsoever. Like, there isn't any game-changing adjustment that came about with Season 4.
If I can add just 2 cents to that sentiment, as someone who was not really looking forward to Season 4 anymore, and as someone who tried Season 4 when it came out, I do have to say, it's still the same fucking game. I tried it out for a few days and I found myself exactly where I was in Season 3, and that I was just frustrated at certain things that the game had. So for sure, the game itself didn't change much at all, especially if you are playing a character who wasn't necessarily overpowered or wasn't necessarily underpowered. You know what I mean? But definitely understand what you're saying. Not much actually changed. But then the question is, do you think that there will be a change, or do you think this is the end for Tekken?
Believe that they're still gonna work on more changes because there are actually rumors circulating on another big update that's gonna come through to do proper balance adjustments because the only thing they just did is just change people's frame data but in a non-significant way. And I hope this update will be quite similar to what we would normally get if we shift from season 3 Street Fighter to season 4, because that's how you do balancing, right? Not local with taken, because bruh, still the same. Still the same game, like you said, bruh.
Yeah.
But here's the thing: I love the game. I've loved the game ever since I was a little kid. So the fact that the love for that game is there in me, I might just tolerate the game for a little bit longer. But I have tried experimenting with other games, and I'm not gonna lie to you, but I've actually been having fun because I've actually taken a liking into Guilty Gear Accent Core. I fiddled around with Dragon Ball Fighters, a game I've been dying to play for a very long time.
Yeah.
And it's a heavy game. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Okay, so fine. That's all fair and fine. At least you are liking the fact that you're exploring other avenues, even though Tekken didn't really hit that mark we were hoping it would hit. Maybe in the future things would come, but who knows? Smooth Jarvis, if you're still here, man, talk to me, man. How has it been going? I don't think I've ever talked to you live in a video, but we've always seen you in the tournaments. We've always seen your gameplay. People always hear that there is a Smooth Jarvis, but no one actually knows who the hell Smooth Jarvis is. So tell us something, man. Just simple rundown. How has been your 2020? How is Mortal Kombat 11 treating you? How has your run been in Granblue? That was like one of your big departures from MK to try something new. And generally speaking, how has life been as a gamer, yet you are a businessman? And how are you balancing all of that with COVID?
Mm. First, I would like to say hello, ladies and gents. 2020 has been up and down, but COVID has made things interesting for me as an FGC fighter, in the sense that I've been playing more outside players from different regions, from South Africa and even Zambia. So MK is actually got a lot of attention from my side, but I actually enjoyed MK11 more because that's where I dominated most in MKXL. That's where I dominated most in terms of combo sequence and everything. MK11 was different in terms of the block sequence. You have to now react when it comes to blocking now. Whilst XL was more of an armor up kind of game. You can just use armor ups, and once you block a move, you can quickly punish. So 11, I wouldn't say I hate 11, but I like it. I don't hate it, but it was a bit more trickier to adjust to. It took me quite some time, and I'm still trying to find my main characters, just one or two.
Wait, hold on. You're telling me during this year and a bit that you've had the chance to be playing MK11, you still
Yeah.
haven't found those characters that speak to you, just like how maybe in Injustice 2, we all knew in Injustice 2 you were the Black Manta, you were the Atrocitus. What do you think the issue is with MK11? Do you think that the game itself has different types of play styles that don't work well with you? Or do you feel like you need a little bit more time to find the character that you really like? What is it about the characters that's giving you a hard time picking the one you really like the most?
Actually, I've let me rectify one error I made. Have one or two. I would say Sonya.
Yeah.
And recently, I've been playing some Shang Tsung, and I'm loving what I've come up with is Shang Tsung, and I'm still yet to test it out online and see if it's effective enough. Because you never know what you practice. Could it be effective against other players online?
Yeah.
It's just something you'll be messing about. So to your question as well, MK11 is a good game because it's got a huge amount of content, such as DLCs and costumes, and a lot of variations and custom variations that even people that don't really wanna be competitive with the general tournament settings of the game can add custom moves to each character that they want. Which took them too long. They took that option from Injustice,
Yeah, yeah,
of
yeah.
which it was a really awesome element that was in Injustice 2. But the thing is about also Injustice 2, the thing I didn't like about Injustice 2 was there was heavy counter picking, too much counter picking. I was an atrocitus main, and getting in close to a zona like Starfire was hell. It was hell.
True,
It was
true.
hard.
So,
So,
mm-hmm.
uh,
No, go on, go on.
mm. so for MK11, my only struggle was I have to always keep at practicing. I have to stay awake. I can't come in after a long time and just jump into the match and be like, I'm going to mob someone today. Yes, I have to first hit a few sets, make sure I remember my combos, and I'm able to react. Whereas MKXL, I felt more confident just going in without even having to practice
Yeah,
against the AI or any other person.
true.
So that was the huge difference because it's a bit heavy when it comes to MK11. If you go in with the spirit to just try and mob someone, you'll get surprised easy.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you, man. I've had a chance personally to play MK11, and yes, it is a very very different game from MKX. If you come in from MKX thinking that MK11 will have any sort of mercy, you're utterly wrong. It's a different game, and what you're saying for sure about how you have to be able to react in defense, I feel like that's what makes the difference between a good player and a let's just say a very good player and just a general okay guy in MK11 is how good you can actually defend. I've seen lots of people fall apart when they get put in defensive positions. But anyway, that for now isn't the point. We'll get back to that later. I've got a few topics I would like to touch on with you guys, and like I said in the beginning, 2020 has been a quite the year. there's been a lot of nonsense. There's been a lot of nonsense this year, and COVID-19 has really been wreaking havoc. But one thing that people noticed during this pandemic with the lockdowns, in terms of the gaming space as a whole, is which genre of games is, or should I say, which genre of games have always been able to stand on their 2 feet, and which genre of games were actually being supported by the people, the communities, the events, the hype, the promotions, the material. And one such genre which was exposed from head to toe was the fighting game genre of games, right? People used to take it for granted that we had tournaments, we had promotions, we had these meet and greets, we had different commentators hyping up matches, we had all these big events, right, for fighting games. And that was actually the driving force as to why people bought more fighting games, why people bought more DLC, why people continued grinding and playing online, playing offline. It's because people had that motivation, that fuel. that you'd watch a tournament, you'd see something amazing, and you're back at it here again. But then with the lockdown, no more traveling, no more tournaments. Everything has gone online, and the online has been terrible. Companies are now being forced by the players to put rollback netcode. There've been all these big issues because people have started to see that a lot of these fighting games, or at least the developers, were kind of riding on the momentum and the wave of the tournaments and the tournament organizers and the players promoting, hyping, and marketing their game. Take that all away, a lot of games have gone missing. I don't remember the last time I watched a KOF tournament. Where is King of Fighters right now? We don't know. I haven't seen a Skull... Well, at least Skull Girls exist from time to time. It's only a few games really that are strong and holding their own, like MK11, because they have a large player base, 1, the netcode is good, 2, and the people are genuinely trying their best to organize their things. But there are a lot of other fighting games that have gone missing. For example, last year Under Night was on a big momentum. They were moving forward. Guys were hosting some of the best tournaments I've ever seen. But no one ever addressed the fact that Under Night Online is the worst shit of all time. Except until COVID hit. This was one of the most watched fighting games. No one knows where it is now. Worse yet, it launched one of the biggest patches. And still, no hype, no information, nothing. No one is even really playing the game that much. So, just to put this conversation into perspective, COVID has exposed fighting game weaknesses in terms of the development and how they were developed, which brings us to the question of Granblue Fantasy Versus, because that was the new fighting game that was supposed to breathe fresh life into the tournament scene. It was supposed to breathe fresh life into the community, new people. If you've never played an anime game before, this is the game for you. Things like that, you know what I mean? This is the game to simplify what it means to be a fighting game so that everyone can join and have fun and yet still be invested enough to go further day in, day out. But then COVID hits, no tournaments, the game is received by the players, people say it's a good game, but then really there is no track record for that game because there are no tournaments. No one can expose the bugs, glitches, and all these things that the game has. No one can expose really the top tier versus the low tier. A lot of things, there are a lot of question marks because there are no actual tournaments and circuits. So this game has kind of fallen under the radar, sadly. It was a very good game, but it never actually got the chance to prove itself. The player base is small now and very few people play it online. It's sad for a good game to be in the position that it is. Maybe if it released last year, things would have been much better for Granblue, but it's stuck in COVID as it is. So instead of looking at it from a numbers perspective of saying Granblue is a good game that failed because of COVID, let's go back and look at what it tried to achieve. Granblue wanted to be the game to simplify all the formulas and mechanics of fighting games into this one anime game that would bring everyone together, right? Now the main question of the podcast is, did it actually manage to do that or not? But before we get there, let's build up to that point. Each of us here has a history with fighting games. We've played multiple different other games, all fair and fine, right? But we've got our own unique histories with how we became fighting game players individually. For the people listening, I personally met KRW King in 2017. At the time, the games he was telling me about was Tekken 6. Well, let's just say Tekken in general and Guilty Gear in general. So I'll take it such that these were two fundamental, two important fighting games to him that probably shaped him to be the fighting game player that he is now. And then if we're talking about someone like Smooth Jarvis 101 or his brother Fiery D2, these guys had history and an origin story with NetherRealm Studio from MKX, even MK9 and Injustice. This is where these two were forged. Those were their fires. That's what has made them who they are today when they're dabbling in with games like Street Fighter or Granblue. So we all have these games where we came from. I personally as a kid came from various fighting games. I've never actually stuck to one. But if for the sake of argument someone were to say which is the fighting game that defines you, would probably be Street Fighter, right? We all have these games. So now then, the first question that I would have to pose to each and every one of you is, these games that define you, these fighting games, probably taught you certain fundamentals. What you thought was important in these games, whether it would have been footsies, whether it was spacing, whether it was zoning, jumping, combo systems, I don't know. You have to tell me, right? But KRW King, I'll start with you. In your opinion, with your defining games, like I said, you would have to correct me if I'm wrong. From your experience as you originated from Tekken and Guilty Gear, what do you think were the defining factors for you in those games to shape you to become a fighting game player? What about those games did you learn in terms of your skills, your mechanics, and your views on fighting games?
Okay, Charles. Isn't like back in the day, I never really used to play fighting games with people. Like I'd always play alone before I met you guys at the code room.
Yeah.
So I would mainly focus on making sure that my combos were on point, both in Tekken 6 and Guilty Gear. And the Guilty Gear game I was playing at the time was, but it wasn't Class R, and I was, and who was I maining at the time? It was YOLO Soul Bad Guy. So, hey. Charles, I fell in love with Order Soul this year.
Okay.
I've seen the light. But for me, like with Tekken 7, like the idea for me in any fighting game, you have to make sure that your combos are on point. Because for me, like if you do not optimize your combos and you do not know how to maintain momentum, you're screwed, because if you do not end your opponent quick, you are gonna be screwed either way. So with Granblue, I actually got that feeling whereby combos actually reward you even more. Like for example, season 1 Percival. Season 1 Percival had mid-screen combos which gave him good Oki at the end and high damage corner combos, right? That was taken away in season 2, yeah? But you can actually, I don't know, you can build around that, because how can I put it? Because with Granblue, I ended up learning something. The issue regarding spacing and basic fighting game fundamentals. Like what Charles would always tell me is, who always has the mental frame advantage? I actually learned that the hard way in Granblue. Right?
Yeah.
Something that I would often see in Tekken 7 tournaments, but I couldn't find a way to replicate that in my own matches in Tekken. But I was able to replicate that in the early days of Granblue, back when we play at Charles's house, And the fact that it's an easier version of Guilty Gear, it kind of made it a more welcoming game in a way, Yeah.
Okay, I get you. So if I were to like put myself in your shoes, what you're saying to the people is that during your time in the beginning, like you're saying, you didn't have the opportunity to play against other people. You're isolated. You didn't really have your own community to play against people. You're stuck playing against the game itself. So that allowed you to learn the mechanics of the game, and within those mechanics, you notice that the more you optimize, the better your chances of winning.
Yeah.
Generally. Okay. And that to you feel like that's what shaped you to be the fighting game player that you are now. That mindset of optimizing every situation, every touch has to be taken full advantage of, is the reason why you see the successes that you see now.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. Just clarifying. Yeah.
But at the same time, like, it's also a big weakness, Because I remember, what was I playing in Tekken? I was playing Davy Gamans, Davy K
Yeah.
from Kenya. I would optimize my combos and leave him at 50% health. But the man would outspace me, poke me to death. And I was like, oh, okay, so what Jackie Chan would always say, like Jackie Chan always had a saying, how did it go? Slow and steady wins the race.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. I finally learned patience, hardest of ways. Bruh. Like, hey, dude, it wasn't nice. Like,
Yeah, it's
here's the thing.
always a grind for sure. Yeah.
Like, you can always have these combos, right? But if you do not maintain a calm state of mind, your chances of winning are slim. Because if you do remember, back in the day, I used to be a counter Fisher in Taken 7,
Yeah.
right? Up until Peeps ended up realizing that no, I always fish or counters. Then you'd have situations whereby I'll get outpoked, get thrown because I'm trying to get someone with kings back one, or go under the highs with an Atlas Hammer. People started playing patiently against me, but I always overlooked that. And then with Granblue, back in the day when you would play Beelzebub, Charles, remember?
Yeah, yeah, back in
Like
the
you play
beginning.
a more patient, yeah, in the beginning, a patient Beelzebub, and once you finally get into the head, that's when I know, flip, I'm the one who's supposed to guess, even when I'm the one who has the advantage. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, like we learn every day. We learn every day.
That's quite interesting. I never actually. It's funny though. It's like most of the newer generation, from my perspective, right? People who are getting into fighting games, maybe let's just say from the past 6 years. Most of what I've seen, you would think that people come into the fighting game community, like the newer generation, would have a different style, but listening to you and looking at what people are doing, not much has really changed. It's just how it's portrayed. So you said you spent most of your time optimizing, looking for the best ways to play the game, and then using that knowledge to find out the rest. So, lack of better words. But then you'd always hear me complaining, people these days, you just pick up a new game, look for a guide video on the best combos and start playing.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. It's just it's disguised by, there's this thing called YouTube now in the internet that people go through. Instead of someone actually sitting down to do it themselves, they just look for someone who did it already. But it's quite interesting that how you describe how you were shaped back then is still happening till this day. There are a lot of young guys underneath us who I've seen learning games, and it's the same story. Guy sees maybe MK11, looks at a new character that he likes, the first thing he goes for is what are the nice, fancy, optimal combos, and then he takes it from there. It's quite interesting. But then on to the subject of Mortal Kombat, Smooth Jarvis 101. You
Yes.
and Fiery D2, from what you have told me, or at least what I've heard, is that where you first began to realize that you've got this desire for fighting games, that you would want to get good at them, learn more about them, and actually start playing other people, winning and enjoying everything that it is to be a fighting game player, was when you experienced games produced by NetherRealm Studio. So you had some time with MK9, but maybe back then there were a few question marks. But then come MKX and Injustice 2, that's when you guys got onto your stride, and being brothers, at least you had the chance to help each other learn, practice, and get stronger, moving on to fighting other people. So please tell the audience, what is it about NRS's games, what is it about Injustice and Mortal Kombat that shaped you as a fighting game player? What are the key fundamental things that you learned from those games that you think define you? What is it about them that makes Smooth Jarvis Smooth Jarvis?
First of all, I would like to say MKXL was my number one game. I love that game, and undoubtedly, a lot of people love that game. That game was top tops. MKXL. MKXL was a good game. It was one of the best. I loved the combo sequence. The first time I fell in love with that game was a matchup I saw Nivek playing, and he was using Raiden, the first variation, and he was doing hard execution combos, of which Raiden is an easy character to use. So as I started out, I wasn't able to execute the first time, but it took me some time. It took me quite a long time to get used to executing combos. So Raiden wasn't for me. I started off using him, didn't work out. Then I moved on to Kano. I fell in love with Kano because of his reach with Downfall. Downfall had reach, and he was more of a violent based kind of character in Exile, and that's what I was looking for. I was mainly violent and into doing more combo damage and
Yeah.
plus frames. So I just saw his neutral was basic. It wasn't something too complicated compared to the other characters came across in XL. Kind of made things easier for me, such as doing his 1-1-2, if people are familiar with it, into an execution combo. I can use that combo and hit an execution combo, or use plus frames on block if I notice that the person is gonna block my following hit. So whereas Injustice made me strong in the sense that it forced me to become composed. Injustice was a totally different game because in XL you can rush down. You can't be outzoned in Mortal Kombat XL. You just need to find your way in, and once you're in, you can deal as much damage as you want, mix or even a mind game, and instill the fear in the opponent against the opponent you're fighting. Injustice, if you become too hasty and want to deal damage and dash in without reading the situation and trying to see what your opponent is trying to do, you're gonna get hit hard, and you'll be being outzoned full screen half the time by the likes of Starfire, even Darkseid. Yeah, Darkseid is one of the guys who had mix and still didn't have, I wouldn't say really had zoning that much, but he had mix. Stomp was overhead, was overhead. It was an overhead, but it looked like a low. It was really annoying to deal with. And there's more I'd like to say, but my man CFI D2 wants to throw in a few pointers as well.
Bring him on, man. Bring him on.
What's up, everybody? Alright, I'm just gonna add on just a few stuff, and forgive me if it's a repetition. So, back to, let's start off with Injustice. For me, I loved it had a ton of good mechanics in Justice, but it fell short on like one problem, zoning. For instance, let's look at the mechanics for Injustice. What shaped me in the FGC will take Injustice neutral. If you that game taught me a lot about neutral, how to get into a character and how to keep the character away. That's helped me a lot playing other games like maybe Granblue and maybe Tekken, because that thing will help you, like if you really suck at like mixing someone, if you don't know mind games, try and understand how to mess a footsie around it and keep them away, or how to get inside with getting the least damage. So back to Injustice mechanism. Injustice and a ton of mechanics like your forward roll, your air escape, for close escape, fire escape, you get your clash. Those are all good mechanics, but they all fell short because of the distance. All those mechanics, you need to spend half of your meter trying to get in from full screen. That made it impractical. So that sucked a lot. So I think if they'd fixed that situation, that would have been all right. Then we go to MKX. MKX teaches me one thing, one specific thing: mind games. So I'll take Injustice neutral. I'll take MK mind games. So for example, I love using Melina and Kenshi. So for Melina, Ravenous. If I get close to you, I can just hit you with some, command grab and the borrow, even though it's a mid, felt like it was a low.
that thing
Even though it was a
that
mid,
thing was a low
yeah,
in disguise.
it felt like a low. So yeah, that game will teach you how to mess around with people's minds. So if you understand that, and if you take note of that, you can move that into other games like maybe Granblue. Granblue, like it's got like what I like about it doesn't have too much chip. For instance, so that game, even though people say it's easy to pick up the game, people be like, will it get easy? Will it get like to get boring quickly? No, because you need to figure out how to open the guy up. Everyone doesn't have a overhead. They've got one overhead, but it doesn't go into a special move. It's low to mid, so it makes it interesting with the how do you open your character, how do you use other mechanics like throws, evade the first hit on and stuff like that. So those are the points I've touched up,
All right.
and then also one more thing in X is yeah, rush down, rush down. That thing actually teaches you how to move quickly inside and step backwards quickly. That's what I got from the net website. I think SJ wants to Smooth just wants to say one more thing before we get back to the next question.
All right, that's all good. Thanks, man, for popping in for that little bit of information that we needed, but it makes the difference. Smooth Jarvis, are you here, man?
Yeah. I'm here. I'm here.
What exactly did you want to bless us with? What did you want to say?
I wanted to say another thing that made me strong about playing XL. I played basic combos at first with Kano's variation, cybernetic, and I loved it. It was my number one. And as time went on, I went on to try out Commando as well, which is a command grabbing variation, which I never thought I was going to be a guy who would become intrigued with command grabs, but I was so in love with Kano, and Kano made me explore how strong as a FGC fighter I could become. So in games like Granblue and Injustice, I wasn't really satisfied with the inputs for command grabs, and the kind of characters that had those moves, they weren't really my type of gameplay. But Injustice made me so patient. It made me a stronger player.
Okay.
By the time it came out, I was still playing MKXL, and when I would go in with my Kano character to deal damage, and if I see I'm overextending, I step back. I take a step back. If I'm using cybernetic, I've got a blade toss. Kano's got this mid knife. You can't neutral attack it because it's a mid. You have to block it all the time, and I have to use it from a distance. So whilst I'm using that projectile from a range, time is going at the same time. And I can condition you. If you jump, Kano's got a 6 frame down back 3, which is a laser, an up laser. I can take you back to full screen if I enhance it, which is something I liked about my character, because I put a lot of work into him as well. And then in Justice, I used Atrocitus. Atrocitus had mix, but I wasn't happy about the shortcomings of close range fighters, because Atrocitus we had a big deficit when it came to trying to get in with zoners. First season, Atrocitus was like top tier because of how long his trait was a cat Dexter would last for. People made a lot of noise about that trait because it would last too long, and you could combo from a low even to an overhead and open up someone easy, easy. Up until they nerfed Atrocitus, and that's where the zoning characters came in. Starfire, Deadshot, although Deadshot was also nerfed to death. It was disgusting. It was disgusting. Fire D2 says it deserved it. Which I don't, because I loved Deadshot. But it was also one of my characters. I also started getting into the zoning game after Atrocitus was nerfed. And I found that I'm also okay with zoning to a certain degree. Because as a violent player, you become depressed. If you're into going in all the time and then being pushed back full screen, and you don't have a backup character, it's frustrating. So you always need that second character or third character, from what I experienced in Injustice, to deal with situations you become pressured under. That's all.
All right. So it's like one thing I noticed is that like between D2 and Smooth is that these two games taught you two contrasting concepts of fighting games. So one common thing I noticed when you guys were talking about Injustice is the importance of controlling space. Most often than not, if you're not able to stand your ground and advance in neutral, you will get zoned, you'll be kept out, and it won't be fun. So Injustice taught you guys how to control space, when to move forward, when not to move forward, when to use your defensive options, and when to attack. So it feels like Injustice was that type of game to teach you defensive countermeasures against your opponent, not so much how to just rush down your opponent. But then to supplement that knowledge, in MK, in Mortal Kombat, you guys learned different ways as to how to apply your offensive knowledge. How do you open someone up? When you're up close, when you're far away, what mind games can you play? How can you pressure someone at different spaces? So I feel like listening to both of you talking about playing both of those games, it's quite interesting in thought that it's actually beneficial to play both games, not just one, or else you'll get one half of the full story. That is what NetherRealms is trying to produce. One offensive game, or at least should I say one semi-offensive game and one semi-defensive game. Both games have elements of each other. There is aggressive play in Injustice, and there kind of is defensive play in Mortal Kombat 11, or at least Mortal Kombat as a whole. But then each of them varies as to how much of defense or offense they give as a franchise. So it's quite interesting to hear that that's what you got out of that. Comparing it to KRW King's story of chasing after mechanics and optimized combos, you guys were chasing up after aggressive play, pressure, and how to withstand in a defensive position. Those are two contrasting things, and it's quite interesting. And before we move to the next step of that question, maybe I think I would like to add my 2 cents as to how it began for me before we take a small little break. When I was very young, I believe to some degree I was lucky enough to be in a position whereby there were various fighting games that I could play with people in arcades or people's houses, wherever, right? The various games. During a time, luckily enough, maybe developing games wasn't as expensive as it is now. So you would have situations whereby a lot of developers were trying to create various different types of games, which gave me an opportunity to try out different games. Let's just say, just to name a few: Killer Instinct, Street Fighter, Rival Schools, Bloody Roar, Mortal Kombat, Tekken, Dead or Alive, Virtua Fighter, you name it, they're all there, right? But then, for me personally, it always goes back to the Street Fighter sessions that would happen. It was Street Fighter and Mortal Kombat. Those two particular sessions that would happen in the neighborhood, where one guy or someone in particular would have said console with said game, whether it was a variation of Street Fighter 2, whether it was Mortal Kombat or Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3, you never know, right? Everyone would go to a central location to play, so and so's house, whoever that may be at that given time. And the way we would play is that the winner stays on. So the whole point was to do everything in your power to win. Now the beautiful thing about that is winning doesn't necessarily only happen in the game. Winning happens in real life. Winning happens in person. Winning happens with the person you're playing against. There are so many different facets of that particular fighting game that apply to winning, that looking at it just through the game is a limited point of view. We had to find ways to be optimal in the game. We had to find ways to be optimal outside of the game, whether it was talking trash or whether it was looking confident or never dropping your combos or mind games. There was an element of mind games, but not just mixing up a player in the game. It's how to mix up the player in real life, how to get into your opponent's head. That to me was the fundamental thing that I took from that time and I carry till this day. It doesn't really matter what game I play. The purpose is to understand the game.
Hello, Charles?
Yeah, still here, man. The purpose is to understand the game, understand where you fit in the game, find your weaknesses in the game, and make sure that the enemy never exploits those weaknesses, and instead you exploit theirs. It's all about what King said. It's about the mental frame advantage. You can take situations where you are at disadvantage to be your advantage. That to me was the enjoyable part about fighting games. The issue of practicing mechanics, the issue of optimal this and optimal that, the issue of who's top tier, who's not top tier, never really interested me that much. What interested me the most was how to get into the player's head and win. So to me, that was the key fundamental skill I learned from playing all those years back, those different games I mentioned, but more so Street Fighter 2. But before we move on, I'm gonna take a quick break. We'll catch up with you guys soon, and thank you for listening. Ladies, gentlemen, we just had to take a quick break. Smooth Jarvis realized that there were some heinous activities happening outside his location, so he had to put on his cape. He's a for the people who don't know, he's actually a superhero in disguise. But yeah, we're back. We just had to take a quick short break, dealing with some technical things. And to anyone else who's been listening this far, thank you very much for joining us. You will find this podcast most definitely on my channel, and I'll make sure I get these copied to the other guys so that you can view them, listen on their channel, and support their channel. You know, that's how I would like things to be. But moving on to the, should I say, the main portion of this podcast, is two parts, two different questions, which I think are the important ones before we go to answering the main question. We had already talked about what shaped these gentlemen in their journey to becoming a fighting game player. They managed to explain some brief history as to what they think defined them as a fighting game player, which is all fair and fine. But then one could argue that it's easy to say such and such a thing made me who I am today. That's all fair and fine. But the important thing is that key aspect that you learned, did it translate well to other fighting games? Did you gain any advantage knowing what you knew from your fundamental game, moving on to other games that you've tried? Because none of us here only play one game. People have played or do play multiple games. So I'm gonna start with you, KRW King. What you spoke about how understanding the mechanics and optimizing your combo situations is one of your strengths, or should I say one of the things that defined you as a player. Now, back when we met in 2017, I tried to introduce you to Street Fighter 5 and you continued playing from there. But even after being introduced to Street Fighter 5, you are now a Mortal Kombat 11 player. There was a time we were playing Killer Instinct. You're a Under Night player. You're a Guilty Gear player. You're a Blaze Blue player. You're a Dragon Ball Z player. From your answer from the first question, what you learned before all of these games, did it give you any form of advantage in these other games, or do you feel like you were starting all over again, that there was no advantage? What do you think in that particular situation? Did your skills translate well to these other games?
Um, I would like to believe it's 50-50 because, like you said, I was well, when I started playing fighting games, I was hungry to find out the mechanics, the combos within those games so that I can maximize my combo routes and stuff. But when I ventured into Street Fighter 5 and I realized, oh, no, Street Fighter 5 and Guilty Gear are not the same game. Like the way you dial in your combos and your special moves, the timing is almost similar but not the same. Like in Guilty Gear you can speed dial everything and a combo comes out, right?
Yeah.
Like you can go from PKSH into special move, right? In Street Fighter that doesn't work. That's when I was now introduced to what into links, like that a light punch can link it into a medium on counter hit, and for me that was actually a new concept, right, that I actually had to learn from the very beginning. And I took that and I ended up applying it to some of my other games that I play as well, like in which game is this, like there was a point when we're playing fighting EX layer when I was now introduced to half frame links.
Shout outs to Fighting X Layer, man. That game is still one of my favorite games of all time. Too bad no one plays that shit. But anyway,
Yeah,
as
no,
you were saying.
like season one player had, well, on YouTube those one frame links looked easy, but to execute them it was quite a challenge. And uh, it's one of those I had to start afresh in order to finally learn and understand how the game is supposed to play. And then ended up separating some of those games and I started linking them with other familiar titles. Like what I learned from Marvel versus Capcom, I actually took some of that and put it into Dragon Ball Fighters. Like I needed a particular team which would give me an advantage, especially when I'm trying to pressure my opponent in the corner or mid screen, right? And the different combo routes sort of like apply, like they were quite similar with what you do in Marvel versus Capcom, right? And the tag system was quite interesting in a way. And Taken 7, since it's a 3D game, I thought the Tekken 7 fighting system would reflect well in Dead or Alive. Remember, we would play Dead or Alive every Saturday, yeah?
Yeah, when we used to play DOA 6 for sure.
I thought it was the same, but it's a 3D game which also had links. Like, I used to use Diego. If I just do his back to two, that's a link, right? You can actually link it to his forward two. But here's the thing: if your opponent knows that a forward two is coming, you get carried. So now it's a guessing game. Like you have to find another quick move that can let you continue your combo and also punish your opponent for parrying wrong. So it's one of those. It's a learning process, right? It's a learning process, and I can't really say what you learn from one fighting game reflects to all of them because all fighting games are unique. There's no such thing as a fighting game that offers you a similar effect. Like, for example, Under Night is considered an easier fighting game, but it's not a Grand Blue. Because Grand Blue is an easy fighting game, but it rewards people who who have good execution. Like if you're able to do a 236M like in a combo, you are rewarded with more meter gain as compared to doing like the easy input, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So like it's one of those you have to find what makes a fighting game unique and then learn from there and then just keep it for whenever you decide to turn on the game.
That's actually quite an interesting answer. Very not what I expected. For people listening in, please follow this man on YouTube. There's some wisdom here. Don't tell him that I said that, but there's some wisdom here. It's definitely true to some degree, maybe 50%. You know what I mean? That
Yeah.
certain concepts just don't translate to other games. It's very easy to be caught up within yourself and say, oh, just because I'm good in this game and then I played this other game and I'm good in it too, it means that what I learned in this game works in this game. It's important to differentiate the mechanics of a said particular game and your mechanics as a player, who you are as a person. You have to be able to differentiate the player from the game itself. So I feel like it's quite interesting that you brought up all these examples of the different games you've played, and after all these years worth of experience you realize that no, not really. Just because I played Guilty Gear doesn't mean I can play Fighting EX Layer, which doesn't mean I can play Mortal Kombat. You had to adapt to all of them in a specific way, and that's quite interesting. I didn't really expect that answer. But what about for you, Smooth Jarvis? Like we said in the beginning,
Uh,
MK11, Injustice, those were, they may be NRS games, right? But they themselves were different games. From your explanation, that the neutral in both games was different. How you attacked in both games was different. How you defended in both games was different. Even the selection of characters and what they could do was different. So you're already learning two different types of games under one company. But for the sake of discussion and for the sake of argument, let's just take the skills you learned from both games and just call them your NRS skills. The skills that NetherRealms taught you. When you then tried other games, you once tried BlazBlue. You like BlazBlue, from what I hear. And your time with Granblue Fantasy Versus, and your time playing Street Fighter and Tekken. Do you think that the skills that you learned in the NRS games translated well to these games? Did it give you some form of an advantage? Did it not matter? Did it put you at a disadvantage? Tell me what's up. Well, how did it work for you?
in this case, I would have to agree with what KRW King said. It When I switched from the NetherRealm studio games to games like Capcom Street Fighter and Granblue and BlazBlue, it was a whole different kind of engine. What I had adapted from NetherRealm Studios was not something I could put into Street Fighter, cause Street Fighter, the inputs were the block sequence was different, the button sequence was different. There's light, medium, punches, and those were new moves that I discovered. In Mortal Kombat, you are given square, triangle, O, and reading the move list is straightforward when it comes to honest when I'm starting the game. So when I transfer to Street Fighter, when you also check out that move list, if you are a beginner from scratch, you can get confused by the directional arrows like quarter circle, forward, into, or for command grabs, even basic movesets for a character by the name of Guile in Street Fighter. If you check out those movesets, they're different from Mortal Kombat. It's not the same. It's different. You have to now reevaluate the game. You have to learn its mechanics and go into the training room and see what works for you. When I started out with a character by the name of Cammy. She was more execution heavy. I had a few combos, yes, but I ended up dropping her because I struggled using that character. Then I switched to Nekali. Nekali was a character I liked. Was me being a violent Kano player. Nekali was more of a violent character as well. So yeah, that aggro kind of aura to him. So he also had a command grab, and I liked his button inputs, and it was kind of simpler to me. But I still struggled with him because he's a charge character, and there's no such thing as charge characters in Mortal Kombat.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
the NetApp studios, there's no charge character. Street Fighter 5, there are charge characters. You have to hold back for a certain amount of a certain time, 3 seconds, 5 seconds or so. It's just a rough example. Bear with me. I could still be wrong. Mm. So Nekali, when I was playing Street Fighter, execution took quite a bit of time. It confirming and neutral, of which also getting in is not easy. Because if I'm using a characters like Nekali against Guile, Guile can use sonic bombs to try and keep me out, and is also a charge character at the same time. And after I think a few seasons, they're given new V triggers, V trigger 2, and different skills as well at the same time. So you have to also learn on top of what or learn new stuff on top of what was there in the old patch. And for a game like Granblue that I also played, Granblue, I would say was easier for me to learn when it came to compared to Street Fighter. If I'm comparing the two, Granblue was easier. The character I use in Granblue is Lancelot. He's not a charge character. He's got cancels, his Southern Cross, which is a good mix, but they nerfed it, which I just might start my own slogan. Like
Shout,
RW King,
shout outs to
Hashtag
Autumn.
buff Lancelot again. Stop nerfing him, please.
Shout outs to
Please.
Autumn Rain,
He
who
need to
once
return to his
asked,
greatness again.
is
But
everything
he
Lancelot does
was top
plus?
tier at the time. He
Yeah.
was top tier at the time. Granblue is simpler because there are shortcuts. There are buttons that you can input, shortcuts that you can input. If you can't import the direct combos at one go, which makes it easier to do the combo. But now you lose damage when you use short input combos. You can also try it confirming, but it doesn't work all the time because there are some moves that don't reach in the neutral. Some characters in Granblue you have to understand and not playing the neutral. Like I have a habit of trying to play my Lancelot in the neutral, and it doesn't work because he's more of a heavy pressure mix kind of guy, and he has to get in and hit hard and try and open up his opponent. So playing the neutral doesn't really work best for him because he doesn't have really that much range, except for his I would say it's down 2 and standing 4. And going in at the same time is not easy when you're fighting against players like Fairy, of which I'll say this now, she needs to be nerfed. Needs to be nerfed. I really struggle fighting that character, and I'm not happy about Fairy. She is strong, yes, but nah, it's too much. It's a struggle trying to get into players like that who can fight it easier to keep you out at a distance. So the block button is also different, but what I liked about Granblue is they included the R2 button, which is also used by NetherRealm Studios, which makes it easier to block cross-ups from any other character. You don't have to really worry much about the person trying to open you for free when they jump or cross over you, because you can just hold block the R2 button. The only thing you now have to worry about is standing and crouching at the same time. That's all you have to do. Hold down that down button, release, and or press it down. So you make the right read and hold the R2 button, and it's blocked. Whereas in Street Fighter and Injustice, the down back was the block button. Down back was blocking low attacks, if I'm not mistaken. And if you hold back, you stand block overhead attacks. Of which, when uh, learned that block sequence in Justice, it was a struggle as well because I wasn't used to blocking down back. It was a new experience, and practicing that actually made my fingers sore after some time. I was in love with the R2 button because muscle memory plays a great factor when you're fighting other players. If you don't have muscle memory at times, it makes it hard for you to react to what your opponent is trying to do to you. If you don't deal combo damage, you're gonna suffer from someone else who is able to execute his combos in a game like that.
Okay,
Mm.
we hear you, man. So I feel like if I were to try put it into my own words, you and King in this particular situation are in the same boat. You feel like
Yeah.
your games didn't really translate well to newer games. And when I listen to both of you explaining, it seems like the common thread or the common sentiment is that mechanics of these fighting games differ. Whether they differ a little bit or whether they differ a lot, it matters. And it especially matters the most when you're fighting against someone else who is versed with those mechanics. And it's quite interesting that both of you brought up Granblue, and both of you brought up Granblue talking about how there are certain similarities in Granblue to the games you came from. So, for example, I remember when King was talking about Granblue, he was like, well, I tried all these other different games, including Granblue, and yes, they were different, so the skills didn't apply. But if you look at it from what you can get in terms of optimizing your damage, if you use the easy input versus the actual input, you get rewarded for that. You can get to chain up your strings, like how I was used to chaining up my Gatling strings in Guilty Gear. There's something similar in Granblue, and you started naming certain similarities to other games, which doesn't really apply to other things. You know what I mean? Like, you can't really say, if you look at Injustice and Street Fighter, when I did this in Injustice and I did it in Street Fighter, it came out. Not really. So it's quite interesting. And then in the case of Smooth Jarvis, he was like, one thing I liked about the NRS games is that when dealing with cross-ups, I don't really need to be panicking too much, because at least I know I have a block button that covers the left-right. Granblue also has one. Nice one. I noticed that the buttons are much easier to understand, and my knowledge on how to pressure using different buttons kind of worked in Granblue. So at least in some small concepts, your skills as a fighting game player didn't translate in terms of the mechanics of the game. It actually kind of made things difficult because you're used to one thing and now you have to be doing something else altogether. But at least there were similarities in Granblue to the game you came from, which is quite an interesting thing. If I were to throw my 2 cents, I feel like I said, for me personally, the said mechanics of the game were never really the point. It's about your interactions with the player. There was a time I was trying to give K2J and 100 Thieves a little bit of information, a little bit of coaching after they had their first to 10 in Mortal Kombat 11. And for anyone who hasn't watched that video, it's on the channel. That was one of the hypest first to 10s we've had. People talking shit, people panicking. It was quite entertaining. But one thing I tried to tell the guys afterwards was, there were certain mistakes that they were making, not within the actual game, the characters fighting, not that. They were making certain mistakes within the meta of the set, as in the direction in which the set was going. If certain characters were picked earlier than they were, if certain things were done at certain times, the momentum would have swung to one player over another. And the example I gave to them was that, in the words I said, I told K2J that it's as if 100 Thieves was trying to say something to you, but you were not listening and you were just saying something back, people were talking, but no one was listening. And I feel like, to me, that's exactly what the fighting game is. The characters on the screen themselves, yes, they matter. Right, I'm not gonna say their functions. Yes, they matter. But to me as a player, what matters the most is my interaction with the person I'm playing against. Where we have that interaction doesn't really matter. Whether you play me on Street Fighter or Tekken or whatever, the game itself only matters for a certain portion of our enjoyment. There has to be some enjoyment as to the game we're playing. That's important. But then when it comes to what I perceive as skill, is the interaction between me and you. Because at the end of the day, you can have the best win record online, playing people that you know you can beat. There's still that possibility of you playing someone else who maybe doesn't have the same high win record like you, but that person manages to beat you. Because in that particular case, the game itself only accounts for a certain percentage of the skill required to win. The rest of it is your perception of the other player. And I feel like that, to me, like I said, is the most important thing. The thing that defines me as a player is how you understand the person you're fighting against and what you do with that understanding. So if we're talking about the mechanics of the game, most definitely, I wouldn't say things translate. Certain games I'm good in, certain games I'm not, but I play all of them, which means that there are mechanics that are just not translating, which are embedded in me as a player. So they don't translate. Sometimes it can even be a disadvantage or an advantage. There was a time I tried to play Injustice 2 after having played Granblue and Mortal Kombat 11. I was looking for a block button in a game that didn't even have one. It was just stuck in my head that NRS equals block button. So small things like that can just screw you over immediately. So definitely in my case I would have to agree, mechanics do not translate. But your theory crafting ability as a player, how you perceive situations, how you handle pressure, how you are creative in adapting to situations, creating situations, looking for different things within the match, those things, in my opinion, translate to everything. Not just fighting games, to life in general. So my question would be split up into those two answers. Mechanically, not so much translation. It could actually lead to disadvantages playing one game and then moving on to the other. There were certain games I remember when we'd have casual sessions where I would say rather we play this game first before we play that game. For example, there would be times me and King would play Tekken. We'd play Tekken for hours and hours and hours, and then before the day is over we'd decide to play some 2D game. Then you find a guy jumping because in his mind he wants to sidestep. But there's no sidestepping in a 2D game. Can you see that? Things like that can actually give you a disadvantage in certain games and matchups. But then who we are as players always remains the same. And I feel like that's the beauty of it, because you can grow with certain people in skill and all these different things no matter where you are, no matter what game you play. So in that regard, things don't really translate. But now that we've explained all of this information, people might be wondering, we had a main question to answer, and now we're gonna answer that question. Granblue was coming out, like before it released, it was coming out with the premise of simplifying fighting games, making it enjoyable and yet still have enough depth that you could play it for a long time, even though it's a simplified fighting game. So now, do you think, like, from the knowledge that you've gathered from your fundamental game, your struggles along the road of learning fighting games and applying your knowledge to different fighting games, right? Do you think that Granblue took these concepts and mechanics of fighting games and simplified them in a good way? Or do you think it actually didn't and caused more problems than it solved solutions? I don't know. This is the main part of this podcast, a question to answer all questions. KRW King, please take it away, man. What do you think? Did Granblue simplify fighting games or not?
I do believe that Granblue has managed to simplify fighting games, because I think what the guys at arc system works. Like actually, the guys in the Granblue development team, I think they looked at what made fighting games quite annoying to play, like the terrible. Oh, I can't swear. The terrible.
Late.
Okay, cool. My bad, my bad. Like they took some of the stuff that would throw people off and tried to find ways to deal with them, right? Like if you take for example, zoning is a very big problem in 2D fighting games. And characters with good zoning also have good pressure. And that's the life, because if you zone someone to a certain extent, you're already in their head and you just simply do a random dash and you grab them, or you start enforcing a 50-50 mix up, and of which Graham Blue ended up introducing what, like spot dodging, right,
Hmm.
to deal with running. But there's a catch. If you mistime your spot dodge, you are counted vulnerable, right? And spot dodging to me, it's similar to sidestepping a ticket, like how you sidestep a certain move that's quite linear. You see, for example, if I was playing who is the Kings capital punishment upward 1+2 +3 on block mid, and imagine me just spamming that all the time and I'm not stepping. So if I step that move, I'm safe. I punish you. Same thing with Grim Blue. If I spot dodge, that's what I get. And also the fact that the game allows you to make use of easy inputs. It's a great way to introduce new players into finally understanding how the game works, right? Because if you actually get into some of the trials, you actually see that they tell you to make use of either easy inputs or the hard input. So once you finally understand the difference between the easy and hard input, um, it's up to you as the player to decide, okay, fine, I'm gonna finally learn how to do the hard shit, and I'm gonna try and get good and level up my game. You see, because I I think when you find when something is easy for you, there's gonna come a point in time when you actually wanna try and challenge yourself and get better at the end of the day. And I think Graham Blue actually capitalized on that big time. And the fact that every character is unique with their own unique actions, like Percival with the parry, since parry, command grab, Soris with his armor absorbing move, which actually got buffed by the way, thank God.
Yeah.
So yeah, like you're actually for like Grim Blue just lets you try to explore different avenues so that you actually find yourself as a player and where you stand, right? Because every character is in Grand Blue. You're gonna find a character that you're most comfortable with playing. You like I think I've literally played the entire roster, and I can tell you that I'm very much comfortable with playing stories, Percival, and hopefully if my dues come through, I'm gonna be having Namaya, because I that's a character actually really that I've been wanting to play since day one. Because okay, because them titties though.
Yeah.
Mm, mm, mm.
All right, all right. So listening to you preaching the Grand Blue Gospel, you're pretty much happy with what they did.
Yeah, I'm okay with what they did. The game is going like at the right direction. Well, except for the nerfs that they gave first of all, but you can overlook that. But the game is in the right direction. But
No, you can't. You lie.
hey, hey,
Let's.
man, I miss my fireball loops in the corner, bruh.
Mm,
That stuff right there saved me. I robbed a lot of people doing
all
that.
I'm saying is the season 2 patch for Grand Blue should have just been titled "Get Good," because some of the shit people was doing was nonsense. Now you actually have to play the game.
Yeah, that's
Or
true.
pick Belial. Those are the two options you have. You can play the game or pick Belial and win.
Charles, you just mentioned Belial. Here I am telling you that Graham Breeze is actually going the right direction. Belial is what's wrong with
Ooh,
Granblue.
ooh, are you calling me out already?
Should be removed from the game. He should be removed from the game.
Yeah, that guy is quite obnoxiously good. That was money well spent in my books. I'm glad I bought that guy.
Yeah.
And it's funny how they say they're gonna release a patch to fix Belial, and the only thing they did was fix a bug.
Yeah, they fixed some bugs and they buffed his parry. That was actually quite. Oh man.
Parry, of which his parry was already annoying.
Yeah,
to
the
deal
parry
with.
the parry is very very good. I've never actually seen that in a game. Maybe I'm wrong, but an advancing parry that auto attacks. I've never seen that. Seen something similar, but not like that. Anyway,
I, well, if you look at Soris, yeah,
yeah,
Soris is unique action. He doesn't move, but he's standing. He can absorb your hits.
yeah.
If you mistime the deflect, the follow up attack, you're the one who ends up getting punished.
True.
But here's the thing with Belial. Belial will just walk. He'll just walk, right? Like he'll just walk. He'll just walk at you. You touch him. He hits. You grab him. Wait, I think can you also hit you when you grab him?
Yeah, you can't actually do anything. You hit him out of his recovery, or you throw him. Those are the only two options you have. Whether you super the guy, jump in attack, low, overhead, special move, whether you hit him from the front, from the back, it doesn't matter. He automatically stomps you. You don't
now
even
that
need to press a button.
Now that I think about it, I think they copied a particular fighting game.
Mm.
Dragon Ball Fighters Vegito.
No, he's got a similar parry.
214S. It's basically a barrier. It doesn't move, but it parries everything, including supers. He doesn't do a follow-up attack, but he just teleports back to a safer distance, and then he can punish you with his 5M. Simple.
Okay. You know, I just had the thought that Belial might be like Leroy pre-patch. Shout outs to Leroy, man. All right, before we end up running out of time, Smooth Jarvis, man, tell me what's what. Do you think Granblue, in your opinion, made fighting games easier for you? Did it simplify fighting games, or do you feel like it was all the same, really?
I believe they did make things similar. I agree with King. The block button, the R2 button, you won't find that block sequence in any other game. You mostly find games like Street Fighter, down back is to block, Taken down back is to block low attacks, back to lower block attacks, even just not pressing anything, still it blocks on Taken. Whilst Granblue, there's also use of the R2 button, which is also another studio block button, which is also good. It encompasses that. And then the easy input of special moves as well, which is King practically covered almost everything. Easy inputs, which is for button inputs that you can't, if you feel like you can't press. For example, when I use Lancelot's super, his skybound art, I use the shortcut because when I press down forward, it doesn't always confirm. So I just use his input just to confirm my super skybound art special move, which is quite nice. You don't have to always stress about I'm gonna drop my combo trying to press down forward. It gets frustrating. So in that case, they made it simpler. The movesets are way easy to adopt. The mixes, but now the only difference is now you have to study each character. For example, if you are a Vaseraga kind of player as well, Vaseraga needs someone who is a patient player who utilizes effectively, because he possesses huge damage but he's got slow attacks. and he's got armor at the same time. There's a special move, he's got armor. And then Percival. Percival is a guy that has to force people to make a mistake because he controls range. Doesn't have, I can't say he's got a massive damage, but he's not a rushdown character. He has to control the range. He's got range, controls the range. So he has to make the person whiff and then punish, and then he's in. Whereas Lancelot, my character, he's a Reka character. That's what I can say. Because he possesses moves that chain a number of times for powerful offenses. For example, the Southern Cross. That Southern Cross is a good mix, but after they nerfed it, it's easy for people to mash buttons like Belial. Removed from the game. So if he fits the mold of players who want a powerful offensive-driven playstyle, which is my kind of playstyle, because I love it a lot. But now, what I can say in its shortcomings, it lacks content compared to other games. For example, Mortal Kombat has got Combat Pack 2, which comes with DLC characters like Melina, Rambo, and Rain, which come with also at different skins, right? Neram Studios always there's this online feature, Combat League, that you play online. If you always, as you play and fight many players and progress, the more players you play and progress a level, you are unlocking something. It's either getting a skin, you're unlocking an augment for your character or any other character within your character roster, which is nice and interesting because people are always wanting to mess around with their characters to make them nice and cool and fun whenever they're playing other people. You know, you want your character to look awesome. And then for Street Fighter, they had a lot of skins. That came with different patches, if I'm not mistaken. Not well versed with it, but from what I'd seen, they had a lot of skins, different colors. Whereas Granblue, it's not easy for you to get the skins if you don't buy the DLCs. The DLC, if you don't have a DLC package, you don't get any more add-ons. It's like that. You're dead in the water. There's no way you can spice up your characters in other ways, so it's not as enticing and appetizing anymore. Because now you're just stuck with maybe the default content that comes with the base game. You can't go above maybe 2 colors. Because when I played, I only unlocked one skin color for Lancelot, and the next thing you can unlock is probably one more item for your weapon that the character uses, and then the rest you can only unlock once you purchased a DLC, which sucks. Because say if you're someone who's probably testing out the game and you're trying, you don't really want to spend money for those kind of things. But look at games like Mortal Kombat. You don't have to always spend money to get costumes like that. You can get a whole bunch of costumes with the base game. Comes out, you play Tales of Time, play Combat League, that stuff is unlocked online, free. You don't have to buy it. There are points that you also win playing online, and use that to buy that content.
Yeah.
But in terms of simplicity in playing Granblue, yeah, it simplified a lot of things. My only issue is their content was just way less.
Nah, trust me, it's like, from what I've seen personally, from all the games I've played, a lot of games are lacking in content, and I feel like, to be honest with you, there is no game like Mortal Kombat or Injustice that gives content to all types of players. It's not even just costumes. Some people who don't want to play online have Towers of Time, you've got arcade mode, you've got story mode, you've got test your might, test your luck, test this, test that, test everything. So there's a lot of content content in the NRS games, and to be honest, that's where those games shine above all other games. You have so many different ways to play the game, which in turn teaches you more about the game, and the practice mode is good. The crypt is great. There's so many different game modes that even if you're not playing online or you're not playing against people, you always have something to do, and there's a lot of it to do. And I feel like a lot of games could learn from NetherRealms in terms of creating content, and it's by no surprise that it's the best-selling fighting game. I may not particularly like it, but I have to recognize the fact that that's a well-made game. But then, to add my 2 cents to this discussion on whether Granblue did a good job or not, just to summarize, King feels like yes, it did. Smooth Jarvis says yes, Granblue did manage to simplify fighting games.
Before you may I hold you before you what fight did you
Oh yeah. Throw him in if he's still around. I thought the man was out.
I'm around. Well, there's one thing that I like about Granblue is the meta management. Kind of like balances the game out and it gives you a hybrid risk reward effect. For example, your special moves recharge like in MK, but then they also split it into a factor. If you want to use your super, which is skybound in Granblue, you need to do particular hits to recharge it fast, and then you can use it. Another part, there's a balance to it, safety feature. You can only gain it quickly once. After that, it takes forever, meaning that they're reducing spamming of super. The same goes with the special moves, the cooldowns. I like the fact that we can give for instance, let's say I'm using set. I'm using my laser to zone you. If I meet up in it, it will be disabled for a particular time, meaning that at least it's giving the opponent a chance to get in. So that means that I need to become more creative with other stuff. So that kind of like balances the game. And I can give an example where this could have helped in MK. An example is Jackie. When she was doing upward jumping and leaping on people. Imagine if when she meter bends on top of you, that meet, and it was disabled for maybe 3 seconds, that would have changed everything. She'll do good damage, but at least someone can come back after dealing that damage, not to be dominating the entire year or just doing the same kind of shit. So that's one thing I like about the Granblue. That's what it did was the meta management item balanced almost everyone out, whether you're a zoner or a grappler or whatever. Yeah.
That's actually quite. I never actually thought about the meta management. Well, we did recognize it as being a unique thing, but in terms of how it stops certain things from happening consistently. So what Fiery D2 was saying, if someone is using meta offensively, in certain games that would put them at a great advantage, especially if they have a lot of meta. So an example I could potentially give is a character like maybe Akuma in Street Fighter. If you give that guy 3 bars, he has access to some of the best EX moves in the game, which means his offense and pressure at that particular point is very strong. He can make himself plus in almost any situation, so long as he has meter. But then imagine if Akuma had existed in a game such as Granblue, where you only have 1 EX fireball every 9 seconds. That would have been a whole different character. So yeah, most definitely the fact that cooldowns depend on the input that you used, whether it was easy input or not, and also whether you did the EX version or not, affects the time in which you can use it again. It means zoners can't just zone you forever, because there'll be periods in time in which there is no projectile on the screen and the other person has a chance to come in. So things like that, yes, that was a very good point, Fiery D2, and thank you for bringing that up. But I'll be the one person to disagree with all of you, in the sense that no, I don't believe Granblue actually simplified fighting games. And the reason why I say this is, if you notice, most of the answers that you gave came from an experienced fighting game player who has dealt with certain situations and understood why those situations are hard to deal with and how those situations have been made easier. So for you who knows fighting games, definitely it simplified things for you. That's beyond the shadow of a doubt. But take someone who's never played a fighting game before. You were talking about easy input special moves versus normal input special moves. This game doesn't even tell you what a special move is and why I should use it. This game has spot dodge and forward roll. Spot dodge is used to evade certain block strings that have gaps. Do I even know what a block string is to even evade it?
So
Forward,
I can.
yeah, go ahead.
So basically, I understand what you say. So basically, what you're saying is they need to put a better training mode.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm leading to. You have all of these options to make the playing experience less, should I say, toxic than other games. Oh, you were being zoned in Injustice, that's fine. Come to our game where you can forward roll through fireballs, and also fireballs have longer cooldowns. But the thing is, if I don't understand what zoning actually means, what does zoning mean, when does it occur, and how do you deal with it? If I don't understand that, I won't even know how to use the forward roll in the first place. This game has, you can chain combos, you can do light, medium, heavy, right? If you look at it just like that, you would think, oh no, it's an easy game for sure. But the same game that has those chain combos also has links and counter hit links. To understand how to utilize those links, you will have to understand how frame data works. Why is it that this button on counter hit allows me to do this other button, but then another button on counter hit won't allow me to go to that same other button? Why is that the case? Oh, you don't know the frames, bro. Well, I thought this game was simple. If this game is simple, why am I now delving into frame data advantages and disadvantages and understanding this counter hit mechanic? What does it actually mean? I remember there was a time I was talking to Muscleman, and he was saying that back in the day when he was playing MKX, when they finally updated to MKXL, one of the things they added in the game was the word counter when a counter hit would happen. The thing about MKX is that in terms of the frame data counter, it's never changed the frame data. It was still, if a move was plus 18, it would still remain plus 18. But then it would at least identify to you that when you did this move, this person was pressing buttons, therefore counter. But since it never changed anything visually on the screen, Muscleman never actually understood what a counter hit is. He didn't understand what is a counter hit until the time we were teaching him Street Fighter. Then he was like, oh, counter hits mean that I interrupted this guy and I get more of an advantage in terms of the frames. I get a little bit more damage, and those extra frames mean that I could do something else than what I normally do. We had to teach that to him because the game didn't explain, and I don't think Granblue explains either. There are certain characters whose counter hit strings I still don't know. I just fiddle and find out what works. Some things, for example, Belial can do crouching medium on normal hit and then do 2 lights. I'll tell you that, right? 2 crouching lights. I'll just tell you that you pick Belial and you try it and you're like, oh man, sorry, that doesn't work. Then I ask you, did you hit him standing or crouching? Because when he's crouching it will work because his hurtbox is wider. When he's standing, it won't work. The game did not teach me anything. That was not taught to me. That's prior knowledge from other games. And it's something that's actually very complex to understand, that a crouching opponent is wider than a standing opponent, and that influences what you can do to the character and what you can't. You were talking about a block button stopping cross-ups. What is a cross-up? The game doesn't even tell you that. There are many things that this game addresses. Yes, for people who know what those things are. For everyone else, what the hell is fuzzy guarding? Oh no! But now we've got an option select where if you hold the block button and you tap down while holding back, you can fuzzy guard into a spot dodge. What is that? So yes, it is correct to say that Granblue, in my opinion, simplified fighting games for people who know fighting games. But I don't think it simplified anything for someone who's never if someone, because this was supposed to be like entrance game where it's like, oh, you've never really played an anime game before, or you want to try out fighting games for the first time, come to Granblue. It's gonna be a beautiful experience. Sure, maybe if it's two beginners playing each other, it might be
May,
that beautiful experience. Yeah, go ahead, man.
may I just disturb you for the 4 years?
Yeah, go ahead.
The training room in Granblue was okay. In the way they set it up was a bit bad, because what they did was they separated. You see what the training, the way the training room is set up for Tekken, and Street Fighter, and Mortal Kombat, the whole crushing blow and counter things. It's there, right?
Mm-hmm.
In Granblue, there's a section called missions.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like what you're just saying about the spot dodge and whatnot. I'm not sure if it's called spot dodging in Granblue, but it's there. The game actually breaks it down. You have to do the missions one stage at a time.
Yeah.
Of which it's boring. It's time consuming. Once doing it one stage at a time. Yeah. What I can say it's kind of poor compared to MK. I'll compare it to MK because MK is simpler, it's basic, and it's faster. They'll tell you with your simple block patterns and everything. Same, they also have that sequence, but they put it in different tabs. For the cross up, I played one of the tutorials. They explained what a cross up was, where when you jump, when maybe you're fighting, for example, Gran.
Mm-hmm.
Gran is the first guy you'll be facing in those missions. He will try and cross you up, and the game will illustrate that you have to hold R2 to block, which is an easy block sequence. While is the hard block sequence is using back.
Mm-hmm.
Of which back, when I would hold back, I would get hit half the time. Because I'll be pressing the wrong direction. I have to hold now forward because it's not a cross up. I have to hold the forward button to block a cross up, which means I'm being hit from the back side, which is the left side. Yeah. So there are a few sections that were explaining that, but my main issue was the punishes. It doesn't give you an in-depth way of punishing some characters. It gives you a few people to punish, like this girl Katarina. Like you can punish this is it what's called the impale sword? No, if I'm not mistaken, I'm mixing up terms. But there's a move she does where she comes and tries to stab you with her Reaper, a sword, which you can try and punish. Of which there are a few tutorials for that, but not all characters have that. Like characters like Belial, there's no tutorial how to punish that kind of a character. If, like you were saying, if a new person comes, yeah, we want that stuff. So if someone who is new, who is coming to the game, like you were saying, comes into the game and has to deal with something like that, goes into practice to try that, you won't know what the move is.
Yeah, exactly.
You won't know what that move is. Of which, in those missions, for a few characters like Catalina, Charlotta, even Lancelot, Fairy, Percival, there are tutorials on how to punish these guys. But these DLC characters like Namaya, Soris, Belial, and this one that came out,
Cagliostro,
exactly. It's not there. So it makes it difficult for someone new, brand new, who is new to a game like that, to get used to punishing something he doesn't even know. And I've noticed a few players have left the game because of that, because they become so frustrated they don't know what to do anymore.
Very true. But yeah, just to thanks that you clarified that point, since you had gone through the whole tutorial section in a more recent time compared to me. But just to go back and explain partly to what I was ranting about. You said that within the missions, yes, that what you said is true. There are some missions that deal with certain concepts. So we'll go to the one you're talking about, cross-up. So it was saying that the block button can help you block cross-ups, right? Which is being attacked in the air from the opposite side, right? Or you can do it the manual way of holding the direction which is opposite from the side that you are being attacked from in the air, right? So mechanically, if we're writing it down on pen and paper, it's an explanation. You block cross-ups by doing this. But then my argument for the person who's never played a fighting game is, what exactly constitutes a cross-up? What does a move have to do for it to register as a cross-up? Maybe let's just say I'm a new player. I use Gran, and I heard that Gran's jump unique can cross up. Then I'm like, you know what? His jump unique crosses up, that's fine. They told me that in the tutorial. But I kinda like how his jumping heavy looks like. Why doesn't that cross up? Does the game explain that? You know what I mean? It's not to say the game doesn't explain anything. In the things that it explains them to people who already know what a cross up is. You already know what a cross-up is. You know that your hitbox has to be a certain width, such that even if you've gone over the person, it's still going to attack them behind you. But what is a hitbox? It's those things, those small things. Because there was a time during the lockdown, I played with one friend of ours who's a Tekken player. His name is Peter. And I thought to myself, well, this is the only 2D game that claims to be easy. Surely he'll get it. I just gave him the joystick and let him play, because I was like, this game claims to be an easy game. Let him go through the tutorials and missions and stuff, and he'll get it. He struggled as if he was playing the hardest 2D game I've ever played. It shows that don't ever think simplifying a concept is an easy thing. We can throw around that term and say, yes, it simplified this and it simplified that. But what is simplicity? No one actually really knows what that means. Because what's simple for you might not be simple for me, might not be simple for someone else. So that, to me, if they were using that as a marketing gimmick, I feel like they're wrong. Because there are certain things in that game that just don't make sense for someone who, even me who's been playing the game since release, there's certain things where it's like, why do these things happen? So Fairy knocked me down. She called a rabbit, and I can't move no matter what.
She's a rabbit.
yeah, that's a rabbit. It's a rabbit. Chichi's a rabbit. So it's like, okay, I've been knocked down. You gave me all of these defensive options, but none of them really seem like good defensive options. What does this situation mean, and why is it hard to get out of? That's not explained. What is advantage and disadvantage in that situation? That's not explained. Most of the characters' buttons, I don't even know how fast they are. That's not explained. If you were to put the advantage on hit or block color, the red, yellow, and blue, if you see yellow, it says that the frames are even. And then I once tried to understand, what does even mean? Then guys say even can be anywhere from -4 to +2. So what is even? So this guy is even might not be the same as that guy is even, might not be the same as 5 other guys even, but they're all even. But this guy gets to do something after that even, but this guy gets countered. Wait, but I thought we're even. Can you see? Things like that, you don't just put things like that and then say it's a simplified game without even explaining what even means. What is advantage? What is disadvantage? We are just assuming because we've dealt with these things before. Put yourself into the shoes of someone who doesn't even know what a fighting game is. Someone who's only been playing racing games their whole life. Then you say, yes, Granblue, it's a simplified fighting game. I don't think it will help that person learn anything. I don't think so.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. With the simplicity is optional. I can give, for instance, like Tekken. I think is one of the hardest games because the only thing that game does good is teach you how to combo someone. Doesn't tell you how to low parry. It doesn't tell you there's this technique called a wave that you need to see it in a tournament. Then why is this guy busy moving left and right? That thing is not inside the game. So yeah, basically what you're saying is true. It's like simplicity is optional and it's not something that can be broken down in one sentence.
Yeah, and it won't be the same for everyone. So I don't. I
Well,
think. I think yes, Grand Blue yes is a good game. It's enjoyable. It's fun, but they need to be very careful with that because it's not a simplified game. That game's difficult. That game has difficulties. If that game was as easy as they say it is, then surely all of us would be playing every character and learning every character and understanding every character in every situation. But I found situations in that game where it's like certain things just don't make sense. Why is this happening to me right now? And you've got question marks. But I thought it was simple. Why can't I identify the situation visually and make a decision? But I thought it was simplified. Why does Belial have a parry that looks like his command grab, which looks like his walk animation? How is that simple? So you're telling me I can't actually tell if this guy is walking, parrying, or command grabbing me right now? But I'm supposed to be able to identify situations. But yet I can't identify that. But it's a simple fighting game. Can you see? So I disagree. I
so
disagree.
I think what you're saying with the now fighting games, they need to very now tell us what's simple.
Yeah, exactly.
Or
They
what
need to define what does it mean to be simple. Simple means these 10 things. Okay, then we understand. That's the standard of what simple is. Right now, there is no standard of what is simple and what is hard.
Because an example is like Taken is easiest to learn to do combos. So they should tell you that that's the easiest part.
Yeah.
Then they teach you everything else. MK, meter management, is the easiest to learn because it's just recharging. And the Granblue, easy input. That's it. So
Yeah.
Granblue input, Taken, easy combos. And then, yeah, the rest. I don't know about Guilty Gear, what you can say. Maybe that's what everything is hard.
Now at least I wouldn't say every single thing is hard, because at least there you can chain patterns. You can press punch, kick, slash, heavy slash, and you get a 4-hit combo for free.
So
But
that one's
even then you need to know the pattern, that you can go from this button to this button to this. You can't go heavy slash slash kick punch. You know what I mean? You can't go in reverse. So even that requires some form of thinking. But yeah, people have to set a standard. What is simple? Okay, simple means this. Then it's fine. We can then agree on what game actually made itself simple or not. Because I doubt if Granblue was as simple as they said it would, the number of people who rage quit would be so high. It is not so simple.
But I think this genre is kind of like the hardest because, like you said, identifying something simple is very difficult. Unlike in FPS, where everyone can shoot. Now, what is the mechanic of that particular game? So we can give CS:GO and Call of Duty. Call of Duty is just rush down. If you can run, man, I can do it. If you can run. Whereas
Okay,
Counter
nice.
Strike is just about pick your corner. If you can't pick your corner, that's it, bro. But everyone can shoot. Everyone's got a gun. Everyone knows that.
Yeah.
So I think in fighting games, you need that, or maybe they need to sell that kind of point. Like I mentioned before, it's like if you want to play a game that's got easy combos, play Tekken. Then the rest you can learn it. You want easy inputs, play Granblue, something like that.
Yeah.
But not to just say the simplest game to play is Granblue, and all these chain combos, wave dash or spot dodge are all easy, and cross up is all easy when you don't even know. So
yeah.
they need to sell what is simple, not just group it as
One thing. Nah, most
Okay, guys,
definitely.
can I ask you guys a question?
Yeah, before we wrap up, this has to be the last one though.
Okay, can I ask you guys a question? From your experience before this era of easy fighting games and all, were you spoon fed in order to get good at a fighting game?
Well, I could counter that argument and say, were we ever good at fighting?
Yeah, Charles, whoa, 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 yay,
Yes,
yay, yay.
yes.
Charles,
No, no, no. Because that question assumes that at some point we got good.
we
I wa-
tried,
to be
That,
honest,
yeah.
but no,
I,
listen, Charles,
I don't
Charles.
agree with you, Charles. Because it's like, for example, in Mortal Kombat, there's meteors, right?
Yeah.
MK doesn't explain what a meteor
It
is.
doesn't explain
What a
anything.
meteor.
Just
Yeah.
one day, you just see for yourself, is it?
You. That is like in-depth knowledge of the game. Now, when you're doing your research as well, when you're looking to become a stronger player, same thing in Street Fighter as well. It is when you're now gauging when you're gonna punish this guy, when you're waking up and whatnot. That's not really explained. What's explained is maybe uh, exactly throws, combos, and maybe hard knockdowns. In Mortal Kombat, they explain a bit of hit advantage and whatnot. I'm right? For some, it's got a better training sequence, yes. But Granblue also has that sequence in the mission. For example, the wake ups, if you get hit hard, knocked down, there's backup roll. You can even instantly wake up, jump. Some stuff, uh, like when you get hit hard by a fairy's bunny thing, which I hate. And fairy still deserves a nerf in my books. When you get hit by stuff like that, it's now your it's now you as a player, from the research that you've done and from what you've found online and countless people you've played, how do you deal with the situation? Maybe if you've been hit by that rabbit, is this person gonna come with a cross up or whatnot? The game can't really tell you what to do in that kind of situation. Same thing is when I play in Mortal Kombat. For example, when you get hit by a mix, someone like Kung Lao, let's say he gives you a 4-4 cancel. The game won't tell you you can press buttons there. You don't tell you can jump over that projectile if he does 4-4 into. This is just an example. 4-4 into the hat, the Z hat that's coming out. Some things you have to discover on your own training. You have to put
Preach,
that
Charlie.
character in that situation and then explore, is this move punishable? Which move can I use to punish this character? It's not always a situation where they will explain exactly what this element is, even when you're starting. Because when I started combat XL, right, and there was no there was a tour about range. Maybe it was there. I didn't pay good that much attention to it. They didn't. What I can say is, say I know if you're gonna use Kano, you can use this down back 3 as an anti-air. That one was something I had to discover on my own, the training, or even back 1, which is a move you can use to anti-air someone as well. But that one's a close one. You bait someone to jump close range. I use my back 1 to counter, punish, do a hard knockdown on the person. So it's just some things you just have to just explore, because in simplicity wise, combos that are executed in Granblue I found way easier compared to Street Fighter, because Street Fighter took me quite some time the whole quarter circle, quarter back, and Taken is kind of one of the hardest games. If I were to compare all three games, right, and put Granblue in it, adopting to maybe the combo sequence of Granblue, and maybe put uh, MK, Street Fighter, and Tekken. In Granblues, yeah, they tried their best to encompass everything. Mortal Kombat isn't hard as well to learn combos. Mortal Kombat is also easy as well. But in overall, as we were saying, Granblue, in terms of encompassing simplicity, trying to simplify things, I think they performed there, from my point of view. Yeah, I passed
Yeah.
the someone else.
All right. Let's wrap it up. Whoever has the last words to say them now, man.
Fighting games are the same as reading a book. Everyone can read a book, but what you deduce or the information or the form of analysis you come up with, it's your own. Basically, when you get a fighting game, you can play the fighting game, but your play style is determined by how you understand that particular fighting game. Thank you.
KRW King coming in here with the wise words. Is D2 still around?
You is still, yeah.
Any last words from you, Mr. D2?
Any last words, my man?
I'll just agree with Smooth. Need more content. For this.
Nah, no, for sure. A lot of fighting games need a whole lot more content. It's not just
That-
Granblue is one of them for sure.
But it doesn't even need to be that much. But they need to put something, because if you think about it, if there's no community, why what you playing the game? If you've got no internet,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
there's no community, the game is dead. Yeah, Smooth.
Okay, Smooth Java is back. One last thing. The another downside about Granblue is the netcode rollback. They need to include that now, because playing online is discouraging when you're fighting against someone on 12 frame or on 12 frames, which is a lot of lag. A lot of lag in Granblue. It's practically almost unplayable. So when players like close range players are supposed to play zoners and getting in, being hit by the same move, it becomes frustrating. I've noticed even new 4 years wasted. You've noticed players now running away from the game
Yeah.
because of situations like that, because they become frustrated with the netcode. That's one thing that needs to be improved as well. And then content-wise, like I said before, look at Tekken. If you get the base game for Tekken in Mortal Kombat 11 and Injustice, augment skins, they come along. Whereas Granblue, I tried to get another skin color. I did research how to unlock this. You have to play the Rampage mode. You have to watch animations. That is so long.
Yeah.
So long. You know you can come back from work, doing your chores or something, you're just tired, and now Granblue is forcing you to watch animations, every animation or something else, to unlock something small. Whereas Taken can just maybe get money, buy it off the store. Same thing with Mortal Kombat. Play Combat League, you unlock it. Play Towers of Time, because now you're fighting to unlock something. Whereas Granblue, they make it a hit and challenge. Yeah, if they make it a hit and challenge, it's a mystery, but what about for most of, I'm sure the most of the community, there are people who are working and people want to be busy doing something else. Can't be set at 24/7 or on the PC just trying to get one skin for your character on Granblue, which is discouraging and annoying. So it becomes a waste of time just to get one skin, honestly.
Yeah, that's true. But anyway, ladies, gentlemen, thank you for listening in. It's been a long time since we did one of these, and I hope that it won't be the last. KRW King, thank you for joining us, man. I believe your YouTube is under the same handle, right, KRW King, or did you change it?
I changed it just to do a business email.
All right, all right, all right, ladies and gentlemen. I will link his YouTube in the description. I'm sure this man has got some secret deals happening right now. And Fiery D2's YouTube channel, I'll definitely link that one in the description right now. Smooth Jarvis, thank you for joining us. Fiery D2, thank you. King, thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next time.